Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Fear to Freedom Facebook Live. I'm Trisha Russell, Executive Director of Fear to Freedom, and I am so excited and honored today to have our founder, Rosemary Trible, here with us. For those of you who don't know, Rosemary is our founder. She started Fear to Freedom 10 years ago. We are celebrating our 10th anniversary. And we have worked together for about 8 years of those 10. And I'm very excited to have her here today to kind of answer some questions for us, give us her thoughts and her feedback on the last 10 years. And if you all have questions, make sure you put those in the Facebook chat, and we'll go ahead and get started. Rosemary, I'm going to let you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm so delighted to be here with you and all the listeners today. So thank you for tuning in. And Fear to Freedom has been my life in many ways, has transformed my life. And I really see myself as wanting to be a voice for the voiceless. I'm married to Paul Trible. And in fact, this October, for 50 years,
Yay!
and we have two wonderful children who have then four grandchildren that, of course, are the love of my life. Paul served as a United States Congressman and United States Senator for 12 years. And then we had the opportunity in 1996 for him to become president of Christopher Newport University. And that changed everything. We have been there partnering together, loving on college students for the last 25 years.
That's
And
incredible.
we feel like this is really the calling of our life at this season. But Fear to Freedom is something that uh, has always been my heart and will be my heart. And I'm so delighted to be able to share some thoughts with you today.
That's wonderful. Actually, I would love if you would start off just by telling everybody how you came up with the name of Fear to Freedom.
Well, it was really in 1976 that I learned what the word fear really meant. I, at that point, had a television talk show in Richmond, Virginia called Rosemary's Guest Book. Sounds a little corny now, but that was a long time ago, and I did it for 3 years. But one day, about a week before Christmas in 1996, I did a show on sexual assault. And you think it's not talked about now. Can you imagine
No.
in that year? And we had two women who had been assaulted, but whose faces were shadowed. Uh, we had a Commonwealth attorney and a policeman. They shared their story. They gave suggestions. Afterwards, there were hundreds of calls and letters. My heart was broken for so many that had never even thought about sexual violence and had heard their stories and called me to have someone that would be a sympathetic ear. And so afterwards, about 3 days later, Christmas was coming. So we lived an hour away from the station in Richmond. So I wanted to do one live show the next day and put 3 shows in the can so I could go home for Christmas with my family. And went over to the hotel across the street. And about 11 o'clock went down for coffee. And as I did, I came back in the room and sat in the chair. And a huge man with gloves and a mask grabbed me from behind and began to strangle me. And then put a gun to my head and said, "Okay, cute talk show host, what do you do with a gun in your head?" And he was a rapist that had seen the show and was going to teach me a lesson of a lifetime. And after a night of complete horror, he finally drugged me back over to the window, which went right out to the parking deck where he had a car and a man waiting. And again, with that gun, he said, "I know who you are. I know where you live. And I promise I'll kill you if you tell." That is fear. And as he went out that window, I instantly called the police and the security, and this man was never found. And my husband at that point was a Commonwealth attorney and would have done anything to have found him. But it was from then trying to identify this man, which we were never able to do, and then trying for 3 months to make that drive every day to the station for a live show. I finally said, I've lost Rosemary. The shame, the guilt you feel, even though you shouldn't, the fear overwhelms you. And I had always been a very outgoing person. And suddenly I felt like there was ice around me. And so I quit the show and said, I've lost Rosemary and I've got to go find her. And that began the search, and that began Paul and our life as we continued on. Within that year, he began running for Congress. We got involved in politics. So my story basically was kept in silence, except for the fact that all those 20 years, individuals would come to me that had been raped. I would sense it in their spirit and say, hey, let's go get a cup of coffee. And so I found that my purpose was to really be that voice for the voiceless and to reach out and help them learn the tools that I had learned to be able to deal with how to move from fear to freedom. So when it came time to write my story, that was the natural name of the book, Fear to Freedom. And as we thought about it, because that was Fear T-O Freedom, as we thought about it when it came time to start the nonprofit and to take the next step, to really work on prevention and education and transforming people's lives, as we have been working to do these last 10 years, then we made it Fear to Freedom, the number 2, because every 2 minutes someone was sexually assaulted at that time. And now, what is the timing now? It changes all the time.
Every 73 seconds.
Every 73 seconds, someone is sexually assaulted in our country.
It's a staggering number when you start thinking about where it was 10 years ago to 2 minutes to where it is now. And I know some of it is because more people are coming forward and more people are reporting, but I still think that number is too high and we need to do more to bring that back down.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely.
So being the wife of a university president, I know that you worked with a lot of students who were assaulted. You saw a lot of issues. Is that why you decided to focus the education part of Fear to Freedom on college campuses?
Well, there were many reasons. One, I've always loved the college students. And we have actually been serving at CNU 25 years. And it's my life. But there are other reasons. It is sad to think that on our college campuses today, they say 1 in 4 women and 1 in 16 men, which surprises a lot of people, will experience sexual violence during their years on campus. And that just astounds me. And also 60%, Tricia, 60%, there is a higher rate among freshmen.
Yes.
And freshmen, they come, they're so excited, they're vulnerable, they're away from home at the first time. Sometimes there's alcohol involved, maybe not before, peer pressure, other things. But that freshman year, beginning of that freshman year, is when we really need to put our efforts starting in programs that will educate them, will help them understand the issue is very real. And that prevention may be the very thing that prevents trauma for them or a roommate,
Yes.
or helping as a bystander with somebody else. And so we really feel like for us and for this season, the college student is our primary focus. Although we work with communities, we work with groups, and in the future, we're open to wherever we're led as we expand nationwide.
Absolutely, and we've worked with military installations as well, as because it's a large issue there as well, and eventually get to high school students, which would be huge. Um, so part of Rosemary, I've
It
always
needs to start. It needs to
it
start
does. It
earlier,
needs to start earlier.
and hopefully other programs will help do that. But we are very, very open to our program would fit very well there.
Yes, I agree with you, 100%. Um, so part of the thing that we always talk about with the college students, the most popular topic is consent, and just trying to get them to really understand what consent means and what sexual assault and sexual violence are. I think a lot of times they're not even sure what constitutes that. And so, to your point, educating them as freshmen when they first come on that campus is so important and so key for us to keep doing that.
And we have expanded our education side because we have felt that the exciting thing about putting together the kits, which we'll talk about, I guess, in a little bit, is it's hands-on, it's memorable,
Yes.
it's emotional, it tugs on your heart. But they need that educational foundation. And so as we go to different universities for the different years, we can give that earlier focus on, something. It could be consent. It could be bystander intervention is very important. Protecting your sister,
Yes.
Watching out for others, alcohol's influence, and also drug influence can make a difference. I think for me, one that we do that is particularly powerful is supporting survivors.
Yes.
Because you may have 300 students there, but you may not have any idea how many have been violated. And that could be date rape. It could be child abuse. Oftentimes they will come to campus.
That's right.
With child abuse issues that affect their dating and affect their idea of consent, and many other things that are important to really talk about. But supporting survivors, if they can hear positive about how they can get support, we always have counselors there that they can be referred to, but we have information that they can come to us and we can help support them. And so too often, it may be the very first time that they have told anyone.
Yeah,
and silence is the greatest enemy of healing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's also the enemy of preventing sexual assault and sexual violence. Because people aren't comfortable talking about it. They think it should be something that we don't talk about, or that should just be put over in a box somewhere, and people don't realize the prevalence of this issue across the country. We just talked about statistics for college campus. We have to talk about these things in order to prevent them, and I think that that's so important. So one thing...
And one of the greatest problems is that the deep-seated shame and guilt that somehow comes with this particular crime is oftentimes the thing that keeps them down from telling anyone. And I call shame self-hatred aimed at me, SHAME. And it is that pain that you give yourself and guilt that you feel that this has happened in your life that often is one of the hardest things to get rid of. It's not just that tape recorder in your head that you want to turn off, but it is that not loving yourself, not knowing how to restore your self-worth and your self-esteem.
Absolutely. It's so important for them, survivors, to know that they're not alone. It's not their fault, and they're not to blame. But to your point, that's the first things that they think of. So it's very important that we teach people to help support other survivors, very much so. So can you tell me about what you think like might be a historic moment that shifted public understanding or public conversation about sexual violence?
Well, of course, today there is more talk about it than ever before. The news media has broadened to get more involved, political world. But one of the first things, there was a hashtag Me Too movement.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually began in 2006, but it did not really take off.
No, it didn't.
And I think it was a little later, maybe 2017, 17, 18. But what happened is some celebrities stepped forward. And when someone of note is willing to tell their story, it opens it up more to other people saying, well, me too. It gives them courage. It gives them a sense of this did happen to me too.
And I'm not the only one.
And I am not alone. Like the three statements you just made that are so important, I am not alone. And so I think that was one of the things. And then, of course, there have been other things. Joe Biden, I believe, tried and successfully in many ways had It's On Us movement. That became a little bit more organized in beginning programming themselves. I was involved several times with them, but trying to create ways that communities could also begin to get involved. This is something that everyone can play a part in. And even just in your casual conversations with people.
Absolutely.
Being willing to be real. And I know for me, there is a sense of fear in opening up and saying, I've been sexually assaulted.
Absolutely.
That so many people experience. And I call my purpose is I exist to radiate joy and help those wounded find their joy. And so for me, a primary focus, again, has been those survivors themselves. And I actually now have begun for about a year before COVID hit and much changed in our lives, having individual intensives one-on-one with a survivor that is still struggling in their life after years with all of the ways that we try to compensate, that we try to change our life to make it seem that it never happened. And it's 3 days down at our family home. And it has been extraordinary to walk alongside women from all kinds of different situations in their own pain, but to see them transform, to see them finally let go, to see them finally move from fear to freedom and from that victim to victory.
Yes, and then that brings me to a question that I've always wanted to ask, but what would you tell or what would you want victim Rosemary to know that survivor Rosemary knows? What would be one or two things you would want to make sure that they knew?
Let me think about that. Let's see. I want them to know that you can survive, that you can heal, but the scar will always be there.
I think that's important.
And yet, it does not have to control your life anymore.
Yes, I once heard you say that they don't have to define them.
We want so much to feel like that happened in the past. But it does carry over to the present in the fact that it has made you who you are today. But who you are today may be the very, very person that someone else's needs to heal. They need to hear your story. And I never encourage anyone to tell their story until they're ready, or if they're ever ready. At least I pray that they do it for one or two people, or get the help they need, get the counseling they need, get the school support that they need, whatever it may be. But it is so difficult not to want to just say, I'm going to shut that door, and that door is in the past, where you may be the very one that's going to make a difference. I used to have this image of a great, big, huge cracked pot, and it said RAPE. And one day I just kind of had this image of taking the light and putting the light down into that cracked pot. And it was like God asked the question, where does the light shine through? And I said, it shines through the cracks.
Yes.
And I said, okay, this is what I'm to be about. I'm to let this light shine through the cracks of the brokenness that I have in order to help those wounded find their joy again.
Oh, that's beautiful, Rosemary. Thank you for sharing that. So that brings us to, let's talk about the Fear to Freedom, the kits for a second. And for those of you who maybe have never seen one of our aftercare kits or one of our eye care kits, Rosemary worked with forensic nurses to create these kits. And the aftercare kit has clothing, toiletries, some therapy tools, and is designed for a survivor that might go to a hospital or a rape crisis center or a YWCA to have a forensic exam. Because their clothing is kept for evidence. You can't shower, brush your teeth, any of that beforehand, but you want to so badly. Our eye care kits are designed for someone who did not come forward or did not disclose their story until later. So it has some therapy tools in it and some other items. Both of our kits do have our precious freedom bear and a note that is handwritten by the person who packed that kit for them. So Rosemary, tell us why these kits are so important and why you felt that it was necessary for survivors to have these.
Well, you need comfort at the very beginning. You are in such shock. You are in such fear. You're terrified to go to the hospital. You're scared of a forensic nurse. You're scared about anybody knowing. And yet I do want to say to those of you that are listening that may know of someone that has been affected by this, to share the fact, if they come and tell you that they've been sexually assaulted, say that you will go with them to the hospital to get that forensic exam, because that's the only real way that we can bring these brutal, violent situations to a head and have an opportunity to put someone away for what they have done. It's very difficult to convict without that DNA. And so that was one of the reasons we wanted it to be part of the process of judicial health, psychological health, and well-being. And then for the college students, when you do something with your hands, you remember it. The students love the fact that they are going through a line and they are putting together each one of these maybe 15, 20 pieces that are going into this kit. And I don't know of any, especially young men that do this, that can't do that without thinking of, you mean this is really what happens if someone is raped and they have to go get a perk exam. And the very beginning of the kit came from this little bear. And it was just amazing, Tricia. I just, for like 3 nights, had this dream about this little bear. And I thought, what is this about? I knew it was something with sexual assault. And then I realized it was they need something to love, to hold on to comfort them, to show compassion. And it's hard for a person to be that, telling that story, but coming from a little bear, it's all the difference.
Absolutely.
So we made a little bear story and created this little bear. The first bears were actually made in Cambodia by a factory that was made up of men and women who had been sex trafficked. And I loved that they made, I went there and held those women and spoke to the men that were there. And they were so proud of what they were creating for someone they would never know.
Right.
But that they knew the kind of pain and suffering that they had felt. And so the little bear was the first item. And then I worked with the forensic nurses and asked them to help us create what needed to be in the kit and the eye care kit. We realized so many people are wounded, but don't go to the exam. Maybe it's over 72 hours. Maybe for parental reasons or for other reasons, they feel like they just cannot go. But you still need the comfort and you still need to be shown respect. And so that's how they began. And even in this time of the fall and the spring, not being able to be on campus, holding these programs, an hour to empower. Empower is kind of our word because we want to empower them to make a difference.
Yes.
And going through that night, hearing from a survivor, holding that little bear. And then the other thing they do is they sit down and they write a little personal note. And I think that is one of the most powerful things as well. I see them just pondering, trying to think what I'm going to write to a survivor, someone who has just been sexually assaulted, someone who experienced child abuse. And the little notes and the letters are some of the probably healthiest thing that survivor gets when they get to the hospital, that someone cared enough to write them a note.
And someone they don't even know packed this bag for them, wrote this note for them. It really shows them that they're not alone. They don't have to go through this alone. We have a resource card in the kits now that gives them information on counseling, national hotlines to contact and things like that. And it's just so important because
Resources.
they're not going to know what to do because they've never experienced this and they've not been through a trauma like this. And so to then have someone give them something like this is a true gift. And we've had people come to us, email us, tell us stories, write us and tell us how impactful that was, and how that made the experience for them so much easier than it would have been. And so and then, from the student's perspective, Rosemary, you've always heard them tell you that it's just impactful to do that for someone, but it really drives home the point that there are real consequences to sexual assault, sexual violence. It's not just something people talk about. This bag may go to a hospital or to someone from their campus, from their team, their sorority, their fraternity. It really drives home the point that there are real life, real world consequences to this. And I think putting the kits and the education pieces together in our Hour to Empower was just a brilliant plan on your part, because it really gave the students something that they could actively participate in to make a difference. And that's what they want more than anything else. And if just one or two people stop and think before giving someone another drink or leaving a friend because they say they're fine and going home and they're not fine, if just one or two people at those events change the course of what is to come, because They know I shouldn't leave my friend, or oh, I should walk this girl home safely, and I should tell my friend not to, give her another drink. If that happens, that will change the course of things going forward for sure. It's amazing. Well, we are coming to the end, but I have one question I definitely want to ask. So this year we're celebrating our 10th anniversary, which I'm sure that you know. And that's 10 years of supporting survivors, of empowering students, and educating them on sexual assault. How does that make you feel as the founder that we're in our 10th year?
Unbelievable. It amazes me. Those years went by so quickly, and growing years, and growing years with the issue.
Yes.
And I think that was what was exciting, because as we, added on program, we added on the shadow event, we added on an orientation event. So as the need grew, we grew with it, and it was exciting to see that over the last 10 years. And we had intended, we were having a gala every 3 years, but COVID interrupted things, as it has for many of us.
Yes.
And so we've had to postpone that. So what we're doing to celebrate is having 3 special events. And any of you can be a part of this. I hope you will consider it. But May 20th, we're having a virtual anniversary party that we'd love for you to be a part of. It's at 7 o'clock. You can learn all about it on our website. October 22nd, kindly the Williamsburg Winery is allowing us to host an event there, celebrating Fear to Freedom. And not only the years past, but looking forward to the future.
Absolutely.
And then the date to remember is our gala is March 19th. Now, this is 2022.
It will be here before we know it. That's right.
And we had planned a elegant, wonderful event at the Ferguson Center at Christopher Newport University in the 1700-seat theater. And there will be dining hors d'oeuvres beforehand. But a key to our entertainment is Morgan James, who was with us 3 years ago and everyone loved. And she has really taken up this cause and wants to be a part of us. And that's what's so wonderful. It's just not music. It's someone that really cares about the issue. And I think that's going to be fantastic. We've got many special surprises for this gala.
Absolutely.
And we hope that you all will take a look at the website and consider being part of one or all. It would be wonderful to have you there.
Absolutely. We would love to have anybody attend those events with us. And as Rosemary said, all that information is on our website, www.fear2freedom.org. And just go on our menu and you can find Gala 2021. We'll start and kick off the events in May. Rosemary, it has been an absolute delight today having you on here. I always love chatting with you, but I'm thrilled that we got to share this with all of our viewers, and we will repost the live later for those who couldn't join us but would like to see it. But is there anything you would like to make sure, one takeaway or anything you want our viewers to know?
I think mostly I would want them to know that they are the solution. They are the solution. In some way, in a conversation, in something with someone that's been wounded, you can be part of the solution by educating yourself, by understanding about this issue, by not being afraid to have someone tell you that they have been sexually assaulted. And be willing to listen to them, but you don't have to fix it.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the trials we can get into is, well, let me take you to a counselor or so-and-so. Listening, having someone compassionately listen to you is one of the very most empowering things that you can possibly do. So you can be part of the solution. And I thank you for that. Because by doing that, You are taking what is in the darkness and you are bringing it to light. Our mission statement says, we want to bring dignity and hope to those that have been sexually assaulted and to empower college students and communities everywhere to empower you to combat sexual violence. Thank you for taking on that charge, and thank you for listening today, and share it with someone else.
Absolutely. As Rosemary always likes to say, you can be the change. And we hope that any of you watching this will share this with others. But again, exactly as Rosemary said, you can make a difference and you can be the solution. So thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next month.
Thank you. Thank you, Tricia.